Okay, so the first part of 5.1, we focused on the differentiating between rational and irrational numbers. And just a very quick reminder, a rational number is anything that can be put into a ratio form. So a rational number is any number kept as integers that can be put into a ratio form or a fraction. It's like 1/2 or -4/3. Those are all rational numbers. An irrational number, so irrational, means anything that cannot be put into a ratio form. And again, ratios can be expressed as fractions. So an irrational number would be anything like the square root of 21, because it cannot be put into a ratio form as integers. So today we're going to take this a step further, and we are going to focus on our second learning goal for this lesson, and that is approximate an irrational number in terms of a rational number. In other words, if I gave you the square root of 35, you would be able to tell me that it's approximately 5 9/10 per se. So we're going to walk through the process on how to do that right now. So I want, first of all, let's reflect on and let's remember our perfect squares. And let's see how many perfect squares we can remember. For example, like 1 times 1 is 1. So the perfect square would be 1, and its base would be 1. Then we would have 2 times 2. Our perfect square would be 4, so that the base of 4 is 2. And then we have 3 times 3 equals 9. Keep going and see how many you can remember, and then I want you to push play and I want you to check your answers. So pause right now and see how many you do, and then when you come back we'll plus. All right, so you should have up to 12, and if you just need a reminder, here are the square roots up to 12. And this will really come in handy when we go to estimating irrational numbers. These are all rational numbers because they could all be put in fraction form as integers. So for example, if I said that the square root of 36 over 2, that's the same thing as saying 6 over 2, which is the same thing as saying 3. Those are all integers. They all work. Okay, so now going on and moving on to our next part right here, in estimating irrational numbers or square roots. So we're going to start with the square root of 32. The first thing I have to do, if I have the square root of 32, is I should think in my head and identify the perfect square before and after 32. So going back to this right here, I'm going to look at these numbers right there. So 32 is between 25 and 36. So I have this between the square root of 25 and the square root of 36. So now I'm going to go down and I'm going to find the base of those perfect squares. So the square root of 25 has a base of 5. The square root of 36 has a base of 6. Now when I look at this, I'm looking for the square root of 32. That is, 32 is 7 places from 25. So the way I'm doing that, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. That's 7 places. But the difference between 32 and 36 is only 4. So when I'm thinking about on a number line, would it be closer, if this is 5.5, would it be closer to 5? Is 32 closer to 5? Or would the square root of 32 be closer to 6? Well, if I'm 7 here, but only 4 here, then it's approximately, change colors on this, it's going to be a little bit closer to my 6. So my square root of 32 would be, I'm going to guess, because it's a little bit closer there, I'm just going to guess that it's going to be approximately 5 6/10. That's my estimate, that the square root of 32 is approximately 5 6/10. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that on the number line just like I did up there. So I have 5 I have 6. This is the same thing as the square root of 25. 6 is the same thing as the square root of 36. So I'm going to put my square root of 32 right there, a little bit closer to the 36. And I'm going to say that it's approximately 5 6/10. That little squiggly symbol right there means approximate. So now I'm going to go into Desmos, and I'm going to go to the scientific calculator in Desmos, and I'm going to check my answer, square root of 32. Ooh, look, 5.656854249. And again, this goes on and on and on and on. So my estimate of approximately 5 6/10 was right on. The more approximate estimate would be 5 6/10, 5. And then let's see, 68542. And then it continues. But again, my estimate was pretty close based on that strategy. Right now, I want you to turn and talk to your partner. How did we estimate the irrational number? What process did we do? What each step did we do? And then any places of confusion. Anything that you don't understand during that process. So turn and talk, see if you can walk through that process again on your own, and then we're going to come back together for another example. Great, so we're going to, in our Springboard books, we're going to open up to page 61, and we are going to walk through this process again with A, B, and C. So find these 3 numbers on page 61, and we're going to go through the process one more time. You can do this in your composition book while I'm doing it on the screen. Just go ahead and do it. You can actually put like additional examples in your composition book, so that way it's not like a showing your work. Okay, so these can go in your composition book as additional examples. All right, so let's go back to our original step right here. Step 1, identify the perfect square before and after. So if I have the square root of 15, my perfect squares before, if I go back to look at my perfect squares, are 16 and 25. So 16 would be the one before and 25 would be the one after. So the square root of 16, and I have the square root of 25. I know that the base of 16 is 4 and the base of 25 is 5. So right away, I know that the square root of 18 is somewhere in between 4 and 5, somewhere in between those two. So when I add my square root of 18 on there, the square root of 18, if I subtract 18 and 16, the difference is 2. If I subtract 18 and 25, my difference is 7. So I know now that my square root of 18 is closer to 16 than it is to 25. So if I put this on a number line between 4 and 5, it's going to be approximately right here. So my square root of 18 is going to be approximately right there next to the 4. So an estimate that I have is that it's going to be approximately 4 1/10. And I'm not positive on this, but based on this process, I'm going to say it's approximately 4 1/10. So now I'm going to go into my calculator, and I'm going to hit the square root of 18, and it is 4 2/426. So the actual answer, according to the calculator, is 4 2/426. So I was close. The way that I grade these or check them when you're not using the calculator is if you are within a half. So if you are within half. Okay, so now if I had said that it was 4.9 or 4.6, that doesn't make any sense because it was closer to 16. But because I said that it was under 4.5, that makes perfect sense. All right, we're going to do the next two. I want you to try the next two on your own. So try these two with a partner. And then, so right now you're going to hit pause. And then I want you to hit play, and I will explain how I did them. Remember, you are only using calculators to check. So only calcs to check. You will not have a calculator to do this with on the test. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to walk you through this. You should have already done it with your partner, so I'm going to just walk you through it now. So the square root of 42, I have the square root of 42. My square root before this was the square root of 36, and my square root after this is the square root of 49. The base of 36 is 6, the base of 49 is 7. So right away, I know that it's somewhere between 6 and 7. I now have to figure out, is it closer to 6 or is it closer to 7? So to do that, I'm going to look at this right here. The difference between 42 and 36 is 6. The difference between 42 and 49 is 7. So I'm going to say that this is at approximately, I'm actually going to say that it's at approximately 6.5, approximately, because 6 and 7 is a very, very close difference. So I'm going to put my square root of 42 right there. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and check it in the calculator. Again, you will not have a calculator on the test, so this is really just to check your work. So the square root of 42 is 6.48, which is approximately 6.5. So 6.48 according to the calculator, which is exactly close to what I had at 6.5. All right, for our next one, let me change colors one more time. For our next one, the square root of 98. So my number before that is the square root of 81, and my number after this is the square root of 100. So I'm going to put the square root of 98 right there because I can already tell that it's closer to 100 than it is to 81. The base of 81 is 9. The base of 100 is 10. So I know immediately that my square root of 98 is somewhere in between 9 and 10. Somewhere in between those two. So now I'm going to go ahead and count the difference. The difference between 98 and 81, so 98 minus 81 is 17. So that difference right there is 17. The difference between 98 and 100 is 2. So here, if there's a total of 19 spaces in between them, my square root of 98 is going to be right next to that 10. So I'm going to estimate this at approximately 9 and 9/10. So now I'm going to check it. And again, I do not use the calculator before I get to my checking. So this is 9.899. So my estimate was pretty close because the calculator says that it is 9.899, which is about the same thing as 9 and 9/10. Great. So right now, go ahead and turn to page 62, and I want you to try to do number 9. So you are finding the square roots, and it says to the tenths place. Just make sure that you're like within a half. So within a half place, like if it's between 6 and 7, make sure you know whether or not it's closer to 6 or it's closer to 7. You don't have to. I'm not going to make a big deal if you say that it's 6 and 7/10 versus 6 and 8/10. Just make sure you know which one it's closer to. So you're going to go ahead and do number 9. Once you finish number 9, I want you to raise your hand to check it. And then once you check these, you're going to go ahead into number 10. Well, you're going to go ahead into the 5-1 practice. The 5-1 practice, so you can check these in Schoology. Okay, so these here are available in Schoology. You do not have to do E and F, but if you do E and F, those are just extra challenge problems.